Expectations were sky high in 2013 when Michelle Bachelet secured the second stint as president of commodity-rich South American country Chile, with the largest majority ever won by a president since the country's return to democracy in 1989. 4 years on, President Bachelet is about to leave La Moneta with very low approval ratings, as her ambitious but somehow disruptive reform program got hindered by the end of the commodity supercycle, but also a number of scandals that somehow stained the reputation of Chilean political and financial institutions. I'm here today joined by Rodrigo Valdés, Finance Minister of Chile and one of the masterminds of the reform program developed by the government of Michelle Bachelet. Minister, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Minister, the legislature is about to come to its natural end. There will be elections in November. Has the government somehow lost a big opportunity to capitalize on the wide popular support secured by President Bachelet in 2013 to reform the economy and eventually to loosen its dependence on the commodity markets?
We have done progress in several aspects on this diversification, but the truth is that we have to endure this drop in commodity prices that had many impacts on investment, on public finances, and also these political scandals and private sector scandals that took a big toll on the elites and how they deal with the common citizen. And that produced some stress in the progress of these reforms. But still, we're doing many things in education. We're spending money there as never before. Reforms in preschool, in school, in tertiary education. We solved mainly all the energy bottlenecks that we had in Chile. We're making a lot of progress in the financial sector, also in many reforms that will update our system.
So if we look at the mining sector is still kind of the core of the economic activity in the country. Investors, mining companies have been holding off investment for a few years now because of falling copper prices. Copper prices have been recovering in the last few months. Do you expect the recovery also in the investment cycle in the sector?
Yeah, investment in the sector has dropped substantially, more than 40% from the peak to where we are today, and that dragged total investment in the country. Nowadays, we see, for example, the imports of machinery for mining or the employment in mining sort of stabilizing and starting to grow. So that points to this idea that with these prices, projects are coming into the stream again, and we expect the next few years to have a better investment projects and materialization of those in mining.
So the central bank expects economic growth for 2017 at 1.5%. Are these expectations in line with the government's expectations?
Those are in line with private sector forecast. We will update our forecast as we go to Congress in mid-July, as we always do. So I wouldn't anticipate our own forecast, but it won't be that different. What is important, though, is that that forecast implies quite a bit of an acceleration. For different reasons, we had very low growth in the first quarter. So for achieve this 1.5, the economy will have to grow about 3% by year end in the last quarter, for example. And that puts a very good starting point for next year.
What have you done to make it a better environment also for foreign investors?
Well, we have changed a few things that are not easy for investors. So it has been very important that during the process to give the sense of that this is it, what we will do, and a package that is clear for everybody. We changed our agency to attract foreign investors. In the past, it was mainly as this typically developing country that you have to sign contracts because foreigners are very afraid of the country. That has moved more as it is in a developed country where you go abroad selling and finding people who are interested in specific projects. And that is starting to work. There are a few sectors where we see a lot of interest. For example, lithium is something that is relatively important for Chile given the reserves, and we're seeing more interest from abroad on that.
There is a kind of a wide perception amongst the Chilean citizens, but also businesses, that these reforms were somehow badly engineered or badly delivered. What's your take on that?
I would say that when you do a lot of reforms at the same time, you have effects, and even if they are perfect, you have short-run effects. If you raise taxes, you should expect some effects on investment, for example, and in some others we have had some tensions with some sectors. What I would add, though, is that in many cases, what you see is some criticism based on that you don't like the reform, full stop, not on the details of the reform. And that's a valid point for someone. But it's important to differentiate when you don't agree on something that, from what is really the nitty-gritty of a reform. All these reforms are possible to make it better in the future. It's very important to enter into a reform mood. The OECD told us many years ago, look, if a country enters into reform mode, it's very important because you start doing things and changing things and you learn. Some things we could do better for sure. And probably next governments will improve upon what we have done.
What can have been done better?
Probably our number of reforms was too high for the money we had, given copper prices that were falling, given our political capital in terms of how much you can invest in Congress, and also a very simple restriction, human capital in charge of these things. So if I had to recommend someone, is to focus in slightly less things, just because these restrictions are binding at the end of the day.
Very last question. Chile has always been a model of institutional stability and continuity in Latin America, but this seems to be a very delicate political phase with elections coming up in November, and already center-right leading candidate, front-runner candidate Sebastián Piñera, also former president, seems to be keen on maybe rolling back some of the reforms carried out by this government. And also credit rating agency Fitch somehow raised the possibility of a downgrade after elections. So how big in this particular political phase of the country, how big is the continuity risk that investors are facing?
My sense is that in this election, I mean, it's important. There are differences, but at the same time, we as a country have very strong institutions. Most likely, nobody will have majority. You mentioned at the beginning that we had majority at the beginning of this government. We still have, but that has some perils too. You have to negotiate within your coalition at the borders, and not with others. Most likely, the next government will not have majority in Congress. It will have to cross the aisle, and that will produce probably more convergence, if you want, in policies. President Piñera has mentioned that he wants to roll over some of the reforms, but gradually I see in Chile more of improving the reforms, and that's important, again, as a mood. Reforms is not like to move a switch from on-off. It's a state of mind in which you have to improve upon always.
Thank you, Minister, for being with us today. Thanks, everybody, for watching. You can follow our coverage of Chile and South American economies on our website, www.fdiintelligence.com. Thank you.
Thank you.